Nobody anticipated this moment. Renowned for his eloquent sermons and strong presence, Pastor Brian Carn found himself at the heart of an unanticipated viral moment. And it was none other than gospel icon Marvin Winans who was at fault. At 38, Pastor Carn was publicly, shrewdly, and boldly trolled, leaving the religious community in a state of agitation. However, this was more than a practical joke. This was a clash of personalities, history, and power that revealed secrets, generated discussions, and questioned ideas about humility, rivalry, and respect in the gospel world. What came next? Even more startling than the troll itself are the responses, the rumors, and the hidden reality. Over the years, Pastor Brian Carn has established a solid reputation, a guy whose impact spans churches, conferences, and social media, whose presence attracts attention, and whose sermons inspire thousands. However, even the most well-liked leaders experience unforeseen circumstances that put their poise to the test. Recently, the religious world was rocked by an incident involving gospel icon Marvin Winans. Depending on who you ask, it could be a scathing troll, a lighthearted joke, or a perceptive criticism. It was an unexpected moment that went viral very fast. Social media buzzed, debate sparked, and the gospel world paused. For Pastor K, it served as a warning that perceptions may change quickly in the public view. What precisely took place? Why was Pastor K the target of Marvin Winans at this particular time? What was Carn's real-time response, both in private and in public? The behind-the-scenes reactions, introspective thoughts, and subtle drama that followed this viral moment will astound you. The story highlights realities about celebrity, humility, and the surprising power of influence in the gospel community, ranging from humor to tension, praise to criticism. You'll see a side of Pastor Brian Carn and Marvin Winans that not many people have seen at the end of this film, and you'll see why this is more than simply a viral occurrence. Everyone is curious about who actually prevailed in that exchange because it's a cultural talking point. Almost imperceptibly, it all began quietly. At the age of 38, Pastor Brian Carn had been getting ready for his Sunday sermon, which would be broadcast to thousands of followers. Volunteers, employees, and the typical enthusiasm of a weekend service were all over the church. Behind the scenes, the internet was already stirring, even though everything appeared to be normal. Rumors had started to circulate that gospel great Marvin Winans had made some nuanced but incisive comments regarding Carn's ministry. Initially, there was little conversation, a few remarks on social media, hushed references in interviews, and inside jokes among the gospel community. Nothing significant or seemingly viral. However, Pastor Carn was blissfully oblivious to the escalating online maelstrom since he was preoccupied with his sermon and his congregation. Although his staff saw several popular postings and notifications, they decided not to worry him. They were aware that concentration, not distraction, produces the best sermons. But even as he preached, Marvin's criticism was starting to catch on. According to people close to Carn, he had been coping with work-related stress before this point. It's never simple to juggle ministry, public appearances, and social media presence, particularly in a day when even a casual remark has the potential to go viral. Even though Pastor Carn had dealt with public scrutiny before, nothing had prepared him for what Marvin Winans was going to accomplish. At first, it was subtle, a lighthearted remark made during a live stream, a seemingly innocuous tweet, or a reference made during an interview that alluded to a friendly rivalry but had just enough venom to pique interest. People on social media started analyzing every word, watching videos again, and making assumptions about the past interactions between these two powerful people. Pastor K was still in the dark when the first viral video surfaced. The world changed at that point. What had started off as lighthearted banter quickly became a hot topic. Fans responded, commentators argued, and the gospel community burst into conversations that were equal parts astonishment, appreciation, and hilarity. Here's the twist, though. The troll was not malicious. It was not intended to degrade or ruin. Rather, it was deft, accurate, and well-timed. A reminder that everyone is vulnerable to the unexpected, even legendary people like Brian K. Marvin Winans' next move. which combined humor, criticism, and intelligence in a way that left the Christian community in disbelief, took the conversation in a direction no one had expected. When the first clip appeared, it went viral more quickly than anyone could have predicted. Platforms for social media glowed like a Christmas tree. Marvin Winans' remarks were analyzed on Twitter threads. The event was continuously replayed on Instagram Reels, and TikTok producers started adding reactions, jokes, and analysis. It wasn't simply the troll that was so intriguing, it was the understated genius. Pastor K was not personally attacked by Marvin Winans. He didn't doubt his beliefs or disparage his sermons. Rather, he employed timing, humor, and a subtle cultural illusion that only those in the know could completely appreciate. The kind of witty insults that provoked discussion without becoming nasty. Both supporters and detractors took sides right away. Marvin was commended by one camp for his audacity, wit, and willingness to speak to a peer in a lighthearted yet significant manner. Brian was defended by another group, which highlighted his decades of service, his influence on congregations, and his status as a well-respected leader. There was no malice in the strain. Admiration, rivalry, and attraction were all in perfect harmony. An internet dispute that lasted for hours. Pastor K's email was overflowing in the meantime. Fans, co-workers, friends, and pastors all sent in notifications. Have you noticed his words? Are you all right? This is so funny. A few messages made fun of the situation, while others expressed worry. A reminder that exposure is necessary for influence, especially in the gospel realm. According to insiders, Kin's first response was one of surprise. He wasn't upset. He didn't feel ashamed. He found it fascinating. He recognized the moment's genius. How, without undermining anyone's integrity, Marvin had generated interest, attention, and discourse. It was a lesson in social influence that went beyond rivalry between individuals and became a topic of conversation in the culture. The responses continued after that. Church networks started talking about the interaction. Professional and amateur gospel analysts' late-night social media remarks went viral. Group conversations were used to share the video. It was mentioned in sermons as a lesson in humility. Younger gospel musicians even started mockingly mimicking the situation. Marvin Winans added another layer just when it appeared that the moment would settle into a humorous story. He further teased the scenario in a subsequent appearance, offering nuanced commentary that made even the most casual onlookers reconsider the situation. It wasn't just a troll all of a sudden. In terms of impact, timing, and legacy, it went viral. Few people were aware of the undercurrent that existed beneath the humor, a conflict between the changing dynamics of leadership in the gospel world, respect, and generational viewpoints. There was more to this troll than simply amusement. It revealed the demands placed on leaders, the impact of public opinion, and the fine line between respect and relatability. And Pastor Ka came to a critical realization at that very moment. Millions of people's perceptions of his legacy and the story of that day would be shaped by his emotional, private, and public reactions. When the cameras stopped rolling and the social media craze persisted, Pastor Brian Ka had to deal with the situation that all public figures fear. When others are observing, evaluating, and discussing you in real time, how do you respond? According to people close to Ka, he took a moment to think. Marvin Winans' trolling was humorous, creative, and went viral. However, it also made Ka face a more profound issue. Being a leader comes with vulnerability. Leaders are human. Even if they inspire, guide, and impact thousands of people, they experience pressure, expectations, and severe public scrutiny. Ka's first response was unexpectedly composed. He didn't snap. He didn't make any defense posts. Rather, he stood back and clearly assessed the issue. He realized that, despite their humor, Marvin's remarks taught a more significant lesson about humility, respect, and perception in the gospel world. This moment also included close co-workers and family. They gave him advice, offered their opinions, and reminded him that a reaction may either intensify or weaken the viral moment. Silence was urged by some, while humor was encouraged by others. Knowing that his next step would have an impact much beyond the internet, Carn carefully considered all of his options. According to insiders, he even considered his own career in secret. Carn was 38 years old and had been praised and criticized equally. However, the Marvin Winans event was distinct. It wasn't an assault on his character, his sermons, or his faith. It served as a light-hearted public reminder that impression counts in both life and ministry. And his entire church and followers would learn a lesson from his decision to handle it. Carn made a decision that was consistent with his values. He answered shrewdly, humorously, and with grace. He publicly addressed the problem in a way that upheld his credibility while also honoring Marvin Winans. In private, he considered how to blend leadership and humility, realizing that being trolled isn't always a bad thing. It's a chance to show composure under duress. The paradox of it all is what makes this moment so intriguing. Behind the scenes, it was a masterclass in emotional intelligence, self-control, and strategic thinking, but the world just saw a cunning troll. Carn had to deal with a stressful, public event, keep his cool, safeguard his reputation, and use the circumstance as a teaching opportunity. The hours following the troll are described by friends and insiders as a combination of introspection and silent laughter. Carn acknowledged the brilliance of Marvin's timing and delivery by sharing laughing with his colleagues. Additionally, he reiterated his commitment to ministry, reminding himself that although viral events can draw attention, they do not capture the essence of his work. The gospel community responded in waves, each more intriguing than the previous. When Marvin Winans' light-hearted trolling went viral, social media, church communities, and even casual listeners offered their opinions, analyzing each gesture, phrase, and subliminal meaning. What at first glance appeared to be a humorous incident swiftly became a contentious issue throughout the gospel ecology. Commentators on social media were the first to respond. Opinions surged in Facebook groups, Instagram stories, and Twitter conversations. Some praised Marvin's humor, saying it was well-timed and refreshing. Others voiced worry, questioning whether the light-hearted remark had gone too far or questioned the limits of deference among gospel leaders. Videos were remixed, memes appeared, and innumerable responses flooded in. Everyone was involved, but some were criticizing and some were encouraging. The actual cathedrals were humming. Congregation members talk about the incident on online forums, at community gatherings, and at Bible studies. Leadership dynamics are a common topic of discussion. What it means for leaders to exhibit emotional intelligence, humility, and resilience, especially while they are being watched by the public. Mentors and pastors offered their own interpretations, perhaps using Marvin's remark as a teaching opportunity, proving that even highly esteemed individuals can be held to light-hearted standards. In the meantime, media outlets and gospel fans started examining the event from a cultural standpoint. Why was the impact of a light-hearted troll so significant? A number of factors were emphasized by analysts. Gospel circles hold Carn and Winans in great regard due to their respective statures. At 38, Ka is regarded as mid-career, having already established decades of influence. Every word, gesture, and subtlety was magnified by social media to a much wider audience than would have been possible within a typical church. Discussions concerning generational relationships in the gospel community were also sparked by this episode. While younger audiences viewed Winans' method as a masterclass in viral strategy and relatability, older leaders praised his astute approach. All of a sudden, the light-hearted troll had evolved beyond personal amusement to serve as a lesson in perception, timing, and effect. Celebrities and other pastors from beyond the immediate gospel community also shared their thoughts. The episode was hailed by some as evidence that humility and comedy can coexist in ministry. Others conjectured about Carn and Winans' unwritten past, which added levels of intrigue and stoked discussions for days. There was no denying the rippling effect. Whole sectors of blogs, podcasts, and YouTube channels were devoted to studying the interaction, with reaction ranging from serious contemplation to humorous amusement. However, the fans' own response was arguably the most unexpected. Others praised Carn directly for staying calm, professional, and humble during the viral storm, while others shared memes and chuckled. They understood the difficulty of striking a balance between public attention, ministry obligations, and personal dignity, and they praised his grace. Even still, anxiety persisted among the applause and laughing. Marvin's troll had gone too far for a tiny but vociferous group. Intense discussions broke out online as people questioned if friendly banter between well-known leaders may damage community trust or sow discord. An underlying truth was made apparent by this friction. Even comedy must strike a careful balance between tradition, respect, and cultural norms in the gospel world. The incident had generated more than just memes and criticism by the end of the week. It had evolved into a cultural case study about legacy, influence, and how public figures deal with unforeseen situations. Furthermore, Pastor Brian K. saw it as more than simply avoiding the troll. It was about realizing how the event will affect the religious community as a whole, as well as his own legacy. In an interview, Marvin Winans made a subtle, nearly unnoticeable follow-up rephrasing the entire discussion, just as everyone believed the story had reached its climax. What some had thought was just a troll was now coated with humility, wisdom, and a surprising leadership lesson. According to sources, the remark emphasized the role and impact that leaders have in the gospel world. With his decades of experience, Marvin had no intention of making Ka feel uncomfortable. Rather, he reminded the community, and possibly Ka himself, through comedy that even the most admired people can gain insight from being scrutinized by the public. That influence comes with respect and responsibility, and that humility endures forever. This realization has significant impact on Pastor Ka. According to insiders, he thought carefully about what Marvin had said and realized that the situation was dualistic. It was lighthearted, indeed, but it was also educational. It served as a reminder that a leader's legacy can be defined just as much by how they manage unforeseen public situations as by their sermons, charitable endeavors, or ministry work, regardless of how experienced or well-respected they may be. The teachings went beyond introspection. Conversations within the gospel community started to center on the wider ramifications. The implications of this for leadership dynamics, intergenerational respect, and the use of humor in ministry were discussed in podcasts, blogs, and panel discussions. The episode was emphasized by mentors and teachers as a contemporary case study, how grace, charm, and wit come together during public appearances. Inspiration also came from followers and fans. Many commended Ka for his calm reaction, pointing out that he was an inspiration to leaders everywhere for his ability to remain calm, thoughtful, and polite at a viral moment. Audiences were reminded by Marvin's astute strategy that influence extends beyond power. It's about using unexpected opportunities to teach, encouraging introspection, and fusing humor and wisdom. Even the commentary in the media changed. The story, which at first concentrated on the lighthearted trolling, developed into a more in-depth conversation on legacy, humility, and the delicate balance between reverence and relatability in gospel leadership. Quotes, video clips, and observations were posted on social media by people who framed the interaction as a cultural lesson that went much beyond the first popular clip and went beyond simple entertainment. Additionally, the event had a long-lasting effect on Pastor Brian K. personally. According to reports, he told close colleagues that the experience made him realize how important humility, introspection, and emotional intelligence are to any sermon he gives. Despite being unexpected at first, the viral incident became a landmark tale that combined humor, pathos, tact, and development in ways that are rarely seen in public settings. The entire gospel community took away a significant lesson from this last turn of events. It takes more than simply charisma and power to be a leader. It's about how you deal with the unexpected, how you stay true to your principles, and how even lighthearted situations may turn into timeless teachings. The troll wasn't a setback for Pastor Ka. It served as a mirror, reflecting his character's virtues as well as the nuanced ways that legacy and influence interact in the public view.